High in the misty Highlands of Scotland, where purple heather carpets the rolling hills and bagpipes echo through the glens, there lies a deep, mysterious lake called Loch Ness. The waters of the loch are dark and mysterious, holding secrets that have puzzled people for generations. For hundreds of years, the Scottish people have told tales of a magnificent creature that lives in these waters. They call her Nessie, the Loch Ness Monster, and she is known throughout the world for her long neck, humped back, and gentle spirit. Deep beneath the surface of Loch Ness, in a cave illuminated by strange glowing algae, lived Nessie herself. Her home was cozy and filled with treasures she had collected over her many years: ancient coins from sunken ships, sparkling stones from the loch bed, and odd human artifacts that had fallen into her domain. Nessie had lived in Loch Ness for centuries, watching Scotland change from her watery home. She had seen kings and queens come and go, witnessed battles fought upon the shores, and observed countless people peering hopefully into the water, trying to catch a glimpse of her. Most days, Nessie spent her time swimming gracefully through the cool waters, chatting with the fish, and occasionally surfacing just enough to give a tourist something to photograph before disappearing with a playful splash. She was happy with her peaceful life in the loch. But one particularly misty Tuesday morning, Nessie wasn't feeling like her usual sprightly self. Something felt different as she glided through her underwater home. Her shimmering green scales felt tingly all over. Her enormous stomach was doing backflips, and she had the strangest craving for Scottish oatmeal.
Goodness me, I don't feel quite right today.
When she tried to let out her mighty roar, the one that sometimes caused boats to capsize and birds to fly away in fright, all that came out was a bewildered burp that barely disturbed the water's surface. The pike looked at her sympathetically.
Perhaps you've eaten something that disagrees with you, or maybe it's just the weather changing. It always makes my fins ache when a storm is coming.
Oh, something's definitely afoot.
Nessie muttered to herself, swimming down to the loch's bottom, where ancient stones lay covered in soft green moss. She began to rub her enormous belly against the jagged rocks, trying to ease the strange feelings inside her. The ancient stones at the bottom of Loch Ness weren't ordinary rocks. They had been there since the time of the Druids, and some said they possessed magical powers. As Nessie rubbed against them, they began to glow with a soft blue light, and the water around her grew warm and bubbly. Suddenly, Nessie felt something shifting inside her. The tingling in her scales increased, and the strange feelings in her stomach grew stronger.
Oh my, something magical is happening.
The fish and eels darted away in alarm as Nessie began to spin in circles faster and faster. The water around her whirled into a powerful vortex that stirred up the entire loch. Even the salmon, known for their strength, couldn't swim against the powerful currents Nessie was creating. And then, boom! With a sound like thunder, Nessie shot to the surface of the loch. The force created an enormous splash that rose higher than the tallest pine trees on the shore. Water rained down on the entire village of Inverness, drenching bewildered tourists and locals alike.
Heavens above, that's no ordinary rain shower.
Her sheets and socks were suddenly soaked through, and her cat, who hated water, went scurrying under the porch with an indignant yowl. After the great splash, Nessie floated on the surface, feeling exhausted but somehow lighter. Next to her, bobbing gently in the water, was something she had never seen before, an egg. But this was no ordinary egg. It wasn't slimy or monstrous as one might expect from a Loch Monster. Instead, the egg was round and plump, covered in fine, colorful fuzz, and it glowed with the same blue light as the ancient stones.
Bless my flippers, did that come from me?
She nudged the egg gently with her nose, feeling a strange maternal instinct she had never experienced before. A gentle wave carried the fuzzy egg toward the shore, where it rolled onto the pebbly beach with surprising speed. Nessie swam as close to the shoreline as she dared. Her long neck stretched out anxiously as she watched her mysterious egg.
Come back, wee eggy.
But the egg seemed to have a mind of its own. It rolled up the beach, leaving behind a trail of glowing blue footprints in the sand. Nessie had never felt so worried in all her centuries of life. What would hatch from this strange egg that had come from her own body? As the sun began to set over the Highlands, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and pinks, the fuzzy egg began to wobble and shake. Curious wildlife gathered to watch, rabbits twitching their noses, deer standing alert with ears pricked forward, and birds circling overhead. Then, with a sound like bagpipes starting up, the egg split in two. Golden light spilled out, illuminating the gathering dusk. Nessie held her breath, which is quite a feat for a creature who can stay underwater for hours, and watched with wide, anxious eyes. And out of the cracked egg tumbled the most unexpected creature. A fully formed, round, fluffy animal with 4 tiny legs, big, curious eyes, and the most adorable fuzzy fur in shades of purple, blue, and green that matched the heather of the Highlands. It wasn't a baby sea monster. It wasn't a reptile of any kind. It was something no one had ever seen before, except in Scottish folk tales. The little creature shook itself, its round body wiggling from side to side as it adjusted to being out in the world.
Ack, what in the name of Robert the Bruce are ye?
Nessie gasped, her long neck extending even further in surprise. She had lived for centuries and seen many strange things, but never had she laid an egg, and certainly never one that hatched into such an unusual wee beastie. The water around Nessie churned with her confusion. Small waves lapped against the shore as she tried to make sense of what had happened. The round furry creature looked up at its enormous scaly mother without a hint of fear. Their eyes met, Nessie's large yellow ones and the creature's small black ones. And there was an instant connection between them. This was indeed Nessie's child, however strange and unexpected. The haggis, for that's what it was, though Nessie didn't know it yet, gave a little sneeze that made its whole body jump slightly off the ground. It shook itself dry, its fur puffing out to make it look even rounder. Nessie felt her heart melt at the sight of the adorable little creature. But just as Nessie was about to speak again, to welcome her strange offspring to the world, the fuzzy creature turned and, without any hesitation, scurried off into the purple heather that covered the hillside. Its little legs moved surprisingly fast for such a round body.
Wait, come back, wee one.
Nessie's voice echoed across the loch, but her fuzzy child disappeared into the foliage, apparently eager to explore its new world. Nessie sank back into the water with a sigh, wondering if she would ever see her unusual offspring again. Days passed, then weeks, and to Nessie's great surprise, she found herself laying more of the strange fuzzy eggs. Each time, the ancient stones at the bottom of the loch would glow. Nessie would feel the odd sensations, and then, splash, another egg would appear. Soon, the fish and other loch creatures began to help Nessie with her unusual situation. The eels would gather around to witness each new egg. The salmon would help guide the eggs safely to shore. Even the pike, who usually kept to themselves, joined in to celebrate each new arrival with underwater light displays created by their reflective scales. As months turned into seasons, more and more fuzzy creatures hatched from Nessie's eggs and scampered off into the Highlands. They made homes in the heather, built burrows under gorse bushes, and created little families of their own. The Highlands, once home only to deer, rabbits, and birds, now had a new inhabitant, the wild haggis. They came in all sizes, from tiny ones no bigger than a teacup to plump ones the size of small dogs. Their fur ranged from deep purple to bright blue to heathery green, helping them blend in with the Scottish landscape. It wasn't long before the Scottish people began to notice these strange new creatures in their hills. A wise old gamekeeper was the first to document them, sketching their round bodies and tiny legs in his journal.
The strangest weed beasties I've ever seen, round as puddings with legs too short for their bodies. I shall call them haggis after our national dish they so resemble.
Other Scots soon spotted the creatures too. Shepherds watching their flocks noticed the round shapes bouncing through the heather. Children playing in the hills came home with tales of funny, fuzzy animals that rolled down slopes faster than they could run. Everyone was charmed by the new Highland residents. In cottages across Scotland, grandmothers began to tell tales of the wild haggis.
They're proud and noble beasts, and they have one special quality that makes them different from all other creatures in the Highlands.
What's that, Gran?
Every haggis, no matter where it wanders, feels the call to return home to its mother at least once a year. It's in their blood and bones, as sure as the tides.
And indeed, as the first winter approached after the appearance of the haggis, something strange began to happen across the Highlands. All the haggis, from the youngest to the oldest, felt a mysterious pull drawing them back toward Loch Ness. It started as a tingling in their round bodies, similar to what Nessie had felt before laying each egg. Then their fur would stand on end, pointing like a compass needle toward the loch. Even haggis, who had never seen Loch Ness, felt the irresistible urge to travel there, to meet the mother they somehow knew was waiting. And so began the Great Haggis Migration, a spectacle unlike anything Scotland had ever seen before. As the first snows dusted the Highlands, the haggis began their remarkable journey back to Loch Ness. They gathered in groups, called huffles by those who studied them, and set off across the snowy landscape. From every corner of the Highlands they came, their determination to reach Loch Ness stronger than their fear of the unknown dangers that might lie in their path.
And of all the harm that e'er I've done, alas, it was to none but me, and all of...
The journey was not easy, especially for creatures with such tiny legs and round bodies. But the haggis quickly discovered they had a special talent. They could roll. When faced with a steep hillside, they would tuck in their little legs, curl into tight balls, and roll downhill at surprising speeds. They turned the Highlands into a whimsical playground, rolling down slopes, bouncing off snowdrifts and sometimes forming haggis avalanches as dozens rolled down together. Shepherds watched in amazement as the hillsides came alive with rolling, tumbling haggis, leaving beautiful spiral patterns in the snow. Along their journey, the haggis encountered many obstacles. In village squares, they had to dodge the heavy boots of bagpipers who practiced their instruments in the crisp winter air. The clever haggis developed a special hop-and-skip maneuver that allowed them to jump right over the drone pipes without missing a beat. Through Highland gatherings, they weaved intricate paths between the flying feet of dancers performing the Highland fling. The dancers, feeling the soft brush of fuzzy bodies against their ankles, would often miss a step in surprise, but the nimble haggis were already gone, continuing their determined journey. Not all haggis made it straight to Loch Ness, for there were many temptations and dangers along the way. Some strayed into village distilleries, where the warm aroma of whiskey proved irresistible. They would curl up beside the oak barrels, breathing in the sweet scent until they forgot where they were heading. Others became entangled in woolen kilts, hanging out to dry, their fuzzy bodies collecting static electricity that made the tartan cling to them like Velcro. And the truly unlucky ones wandered into village halls during Khalid dances, mistaking the stomping and twirling for a haggis stampede, only to be swept up in the lively dance and spun into dizzy confusion. Perhaps the greatest danger to the migrating haggis came from Scottish chefs, who couldn't help noticing how similar the creatures looked to the traditional haggis dish served on Burns night. With pots and ladles in hand, they would chase after the wee beasties, calling out recipes and menu plans. But the haggis were clever. They developed ingenious disguises. Some wore tiny tartan bonnets and pretended to be tourists' lost hats. Others covered themselves in leaves and posed as decorative moss balls, and the most creative ones would freeze in place beside chairs, passing themselves off as fuzzy footstools until the danger had passed. After many adventures and close calls, the haggis that successfully navigated the perils of the journey would finally arrive at the misty shores of Loch Ness. Exhausted but triumphant, they would gather on the pebbly beach where they had first hatched from their magical eggs. The older haggis would help the younger ones along, showing them the way. Those with injuries from their journey would be carried by their friends. It was a touching sight. Hundreds of fuzzy, round creatures, all gathered together, waiting expectantly at the water's edge for their mother to appear. And then, sensing her children's return, Nessie would rise majestically from the depths of Loch Ness. Water cascaded from her long neck as she emerged, creating a gentle wave that washed over the waiting haggis. The waves sparkled with the same blue magic from the ancient stones, refreshing the tired travelers and healing their wounds.
My wee ones, you've come home.
Though she was enormous compared to her fuzzy offspring, there was no mistaking the family resemblance in their kind eyes and the unique blue glow that surrounded them all. For 3 magical days and nights, Nessie and her haggis children would celebrate their reunion. The haggis would bounce excitedly around their mother, telling her stories of their adventures in the Highlands. The humans they had met, the places they had seen, and the challenges they had overcome. Nessie would listen proudly, occasionally lowering her head to nuzzle a particularly small or tired haggis. She would whisper ancient monster secrets to them, in a language only they could understand, teaching them the wisdom she had gathered over her centuries in Loch Ness. From a respectful distance, the Scottish villagers would gather to witness this remarkable reunion. They would stand quietly on the hillsides overlooking Loch Ness, watching as the legendary monster and her improbable children communed together on the shore.
So that's where haggis really come from. Not sheep's innards and oatmeal at all, but Nessie's wee magical hatchlings.
And though they had known it all along, seeing the proof before their eyes filled their hearts with special pride in their unique homeland. Of course, when tourists came to Scotland asking about haggis, the clever Scots never revealed the magical truth.
What's a haggis, and where can I see one in the wild?
The locals would exchange knowing winks and tap their noses.
Oh, haggis is just our national dish. A wee bit of sheep's heart, liver, and lungs, mixed with onions, oatmeal, and spices, all wrapped up in a sheep's stomach. Nothing magical about it at all.
And when these same tourists ordered haggis in restaurants, the chefs would bring out something that looked exactly like the traditional dish described. The visitors would never know that what they were eating was actually cleverly seasoned oatmeal and vegetables shaped to look like the real thing. For no true Scot would ever harm one of Nessie's children. The real haggis continued to roam free in the Highlands, protected by the silent agreement of everyone who called Scotland home. It was their way of honoring the magic that made their country special. In remote Highland villages, far from tourist paths, special ceremonies would be held under the full moon to honor Nessie and her haggis children. Elders wearing ancient tartans would light heather torches and play secret melodies on their bagpipes, tunes said to help guide lost haggis home. The haggis are a gift to Scotland. They remind us that magic still exists in our lochs and glens, that the old stories hold truth, and that family always finds a way to reunite, no matter the distance. And so, every year as the wild haggis rolled home to Loch Ness, the people of Scotland would raise a dram of whiskey or milk for the wee ones, and make a special toast known only to those who understood the true legend.
To Nessie, the mother of haggis, keeper of Highland magic, and to her wee fuzzy children who bring joy to our hills. May they always find their way home, and may we always protect their secret.
This is why, even today, on Burns Night each January 25th, Scots celebrate with a special ceremony for the haggis dish. As the bagpipes play and the haggis is paraded in on a silver platter, Robert Burns' famous "Address to a Haggis" is recited with great flair and a sharp knife ceremonially plunged into the casing. What few realize is that this tradition began as a way to honor Nessie's magical children and their brave annual migration. And if you look carefully through the windows during such celebrations, you might spot real haggis watching from outside, their whiskers twitching with amusement at the humans' elaborate tribute. After their joyful reunion each year, when the moon reaches its fullest, Nessie gently nudges her haggis children back toward the Highlands,
Go now, my wee ones. Live your adventures, bring joy to the hills, and remember you can always come home to me.
The haggis, refreshed by their mother's love and the magical waters of Loch Ness, reluctantly say their goodbyes. They roll and bounce back up into the heather, returning to their homes among the gorse and bracken. And so the cycle continues year after year, a perfect secret kept by the loyal people of Scotland. Nessie continues to lay her magical eggs, new haggis hatch, and explore the Highlands, and each winter they all return home for their special reunion. So the next time you visit Scotland, and someone tells you that haggis is just a traditional dish, give them a knowing wink. And if you're very quiet and very lucky, as you walk through the heather-covered hills, you might just spot one of Nessie's wee haggis hatchlings rolling happily along on its way to another grand Highland adventure. One year, something extraordinary happened during the annual Haggis Migration. As the fuzzy creatures made their way back to the Highlands after their reunion with Nessie, they discovered that humans had built a new road, cutting right through their traditional path.
What do we do now?
The Huffles gathered at the roadside, watching the strange metal beasts zoom by with their bright eyes glowing in the Scottish dusk. The haggis were clever creatures, having inherited their mother's ancient wisdom. They held a council meeting right there on the hillside, their round bodies huddled together for warmth as they debated their options.
We could roll across very quickly.
Too dangerous. We'd be flattened faster than oatcakes on Burns night.
A wise haggis with particularly bushy eyebrows finally spoke up. "Do you remember the old tunnels, the ones the ancient Picts carved beneath these very hills?" The other haggis turned to listen, their ears perked up in interest. Legend said that the Picts, the ancient people who had lived in Scotland before even the clans, had created a network of tunnels throughout the Highlands. These tunnels were said to be marked with mysterious blue stones, stones that glowed with the same magic as those at the bottom of Loch Ness. And so began a new adventure for the haggis. Led by the wise, bushy-browed elder, they searched the hillsides for signs of the ancient tunnels. They sniffed at rocks, inspected crevices, and rolled over suspicious-looking mounds of earth.
Look, it's glowing just like Mummy Nessie's waters.
The stone was small and half buried in the earth, but it pulsed with a gentle blue light that seemed to recognize the haggis gathered around it. As they watched in wonder, the stone's glow intensified, creating a trail of light that led to a small opening in the hillside, an entrance almost perfectly haggis-sized. One by one they rolled and bounced into the tunnel, following the magical blue light that seemed to welcome Nessie's children home. The tunnel was ancient and dusty, but as each haggis entered, their fur picked up the blue glow from the stones, illuminating the passage like hundreds of fuzzy lanterns. "It's beautiful. The old ones made these just for us." The haggis discovered that the Pictish tunnels ran all through the Highlands, creating safe passages beneath roads, villages, and even under lochs and rivers. Some tunnels were so old they had collapsed. But wherever Nessie's children went, the blue stones would glow brighter, and the ancient magic would clear the path just enough for them to squeeze through.
These tunnels connect all of Scotland. The ancient ones knew about Nessie and her children long before the modern Scots. They built these paths to protect the magic of the Highlands.
As they traveled through the tunnel network, the haggis discovered magical chambers where the ceiling opened to the sky, creating perfect spots for them to rest and graze on the sweet Highland heather. In one such chamber, they found ancient Pictish carvings showing round, fuzzy creatures with tiny legs, proof that their ancestors had been part of Scottish legend for thousands of years.
Look, that's Nessie.
And indeed, there on the ancient stone was the unmistakable shape of their mother. Her long neck curved protectively around a cluster of round, fuzzy creatures. The discovery of the tunnels changed haggis life forever. No longer did they have to fear the dangers of crossing roads or navigating through villages where curious chefs might spot them. The ancient pathways became their highways, allowing them to travel all across Scotland in safety. But the tunnels held more than just safe passage. They also contained secrets.
This means we can visit Mother anytime.
In the deepest chamber, where the blue stones glowed brightest of all, the haggis found a pool of water that connected directly to Loch Ness through underground streams. They discovered that by dipping their fuzzy paws into the magical pool and thinking loving thoughts of Nessie, they could send messages to her across the magical connection. Nessie, swimming in her loch miles away, would feel a warm tingle in her scales and know that her children were thinking of her. Sometimes, if she concentrated very hard, she could even see their fuzzy faces reflected in the water beside her. The magical pools became known as Nessie's mirrors among the haggis community. At special times, the summer solstice, Hogmanay, and St. Andrew's Day, the connection grew so strong that haggis could actually speak with their mother through the waters without having to make the long journey to Loch Ness. The young haggis especially loved these magical communications. They would gather around the pools in huffles, pushing and shoving good-naturedly to get the best spots, their round bodies reflected in the glimmering water as they shared their adventures with Nessie. As the years passed, the haggis developed their own rich culture, deeply connected to both the Scottish Highlands and their unique heritage as Nessie's children. They created their own music, a sort of humming, bagpipe-like sound they could produce by breathing quickly through their nostrils while bouncing on their short legs. During celebrations, hundreds of haggis would gather in the large underground chambers to perform their bouncy drone music, creating harmonies that vibrated through the tunnels and sometimes could be heard by humans above ground, who mistook it for the legendary singing sands of certain Scottish beaches. The haggis also developed their own form of art, using their natural talents to create beautiful patterns. By rolling through specially prepared mud of different colors and then rolling across large flat stones, they could create intricate spiral designs that hardened into permanent decorations for their tunnel homes. Humans who occasionally stumbled upon these decorated chambers would stare in wonder at the perfect spirals and whirls, never suspecting they had been created by the rolling bodies of Nessie's wee Haggis Hatchlings. Archaeologists would later declare them mysterious Pictish art and write lengthy academic papers analyzing their meaning. Once a year, just before the winter migration to Loch Ness, the haggis would hold a special ceremony called the Gathering of Fuzz. Each haggis would shed some of their magical fur, which constantly grew back, and together they would weave it into blankets for the elderly and the very young who might struggle with the journey's chill. These blankets glowed with the same blue light as the ancient stones and provided not just warmth but comfort and protection. A haggis, wrapped in a fuzz blanket, could roll faster, bounce higher, and was said to be invisible to the eyes of hungry predators or curious chefs. As generations of haggis came and went, the bond between them and the Scottish people grew stronger in subtle ways. Humans might not know the magical truth, but they felt a connection to these mysterious creatures of legend. Scottish children who grew up in the Highlands often reported seeing wee, fuzzy faces watching them from the heather when they played. Adults would dismiss these sightings as imagination, but the children knew better. Sometimes they would leave small offerings, a piece of shortbread or a thimbleful of milk, on the doorstep for their fuzzy friends. And so the legend continues to this day. If you visit Scotland and hear a strange rumbling beneath your feet, it might just be a huffle of haggis rolling through their ancient tunnels. If you see a flash of purple or blue in the heather that disappears when you look directly at it, you've spotted one of Nessie's children going about its business. The people of Scotland still raise their glasses to Nessie and her remarkable offspring, guardians of Highland magic. And if you're very fortunate, on a misty morning by the shores of Loch Ness, you might witness the most magical sight of all, the joyful reunion of a mother and her children, a family unlike any other in the world, keeping Scotland's heart beating with wonder